Hey everyone, this is Ryan coming to you this week with another traction tip, and today we're talking about money. Actually, we're talking about a question that comes up a lot, and I normally hear this from owners or from leadership teams pretty early on in the EOS implementation process. They'll say, how much information should we share with the rest of our team? And they're normally talking about financial data. How much information should we share? So my answer to them is always, I believe people, employees that is, should know enough to know if they're winning, to know if they're doing their job well, to know if they're successful. I've seen companies and worked with companies where a sales team wouldn't have any idea what their cumulative sales were for the period, or what their profit margins were, or if they were even profitable. I've even seen companies that had 2 or 3 lines of business and had no idea if one was profitable or the other was profitable. In other words, it's hard to make business decisions if you don't know where the money's coming and where the money's going. So I'm not saying that you need to share all finances with anyone. In fact, if you're interested in sharing finances with your team, look up open book management or open book accounting. There's tons of great articles out there. I was hesitant for years and years in my previous businesses. So I'm not saying that you need to share everything with everyone. I've seen companies that do that. In fact, in my previous companies, my rule was I would show anybody, anything, anytime except individual payroll. So when we had our all hands meetings, I had detailed P&Ls for everyone. We would go through them line by line, and my only off-limits area was that I would not show or discuss individual payrolls in front of everybody. Now, one-on-one, I'll be happy to discuss your payroll, but I wouldn't discuss other people's payroll with you. That was kind of my rule. So again, I'm not proposing that, I'm not suggesting that, but I'm saying if you want to do that, here's a good place to start. So the first thing, if you want to teach your people about finances and start talking about numbers to them, before you show them a single real spreadsheet, make sure they understand finances. Kind of have a Finance 101 class. There's 3 main financial statements that you as an owner or you as a leadership team member should be looking at regularly. And typically those are the P&L, profit and loss statement, also known as the income statement, the balance sheet, and the statement of cash flows. Those are the main 3. You should know those things back and forwards. You should know them well enough to teach other people. Because that's what we're going to be doing later on. And honestly, so statement of cash flow is the document that talks about our cash, how we make it, how we spend it. The balance sheet, we're measuring things like what are our assets, what are our liabilities, what is our equity. But honestly, you can spend 99% of your time with your team on the P&L, the profit and loss. That's really where most of the important numbers that your team needs to see would be located. So explain to them that, listen, the P&L shows all the money we make, all the revenue, hopefully by line of business, so we can clearly see where revenue is coming in. Then we can see cost of goods sold. Those are the not expenses, those are the costs that are required for us to deliver the good or service that we sell. When you take the revenue, you minus the cost of goods sold, we've got our gross profit. Then we pull out expenses. After all the expenses are taken out, we're left with our net profit. And so really with just those 4 or 5 numbers, you can give someone a very summarized P&L, hits the high points, they can know the overall success of themselves or the department or the whole company, but you haven't gone into too much detail. So that's a good middle ground. I see some companies doing that. If you want to go farther though, this was something I did and it worked really well. Buy some play money. So this is $1 million. This is $1 million from Amazon. So you can get on Amazon and buy all the fake money you want to buy. So if you're doing about 10 to 15 million or less, you can just buy a real amount of money. You could have 10, 15 stacks of this, and it's a nice visual. It really will drive the point home, so I strongly recommend it. If you're doing more than 10 or 15 million a year, then you'll just have too much stacks of too many stacks of money. So you could do a smaller amount and just use percentages to get your point across. The idea is still the same. What I did and what I've seen companies do that work pretty well, buy a stack of money, equal to what their last period revenue was. Break it up into what those were. For example, payroll or expenses, whatever. Bundle it and then put it in a stack on the table. And then at your next all hands meetings, start explaining a P&L. You can even download sample P&Ls off the internet if you want to give some people some fake numbers to play with. But what I did, I took our real revenue, broke it up into the real pots of money, bundled it, set it on the table with me at the front of the room, and I called one at a time. I just randomly called people. I said, come grab the top stack, read it off, tell people what that is. So the first guy came up and he was like, okay, so we did X dollars last year. That's our total revenue. This first stack is our payroll. So if you're a service company, your service payroll, you could track it as a cost of goods sold. So that's a big chunk. In fact, in most companies, that's 30, 40% right there. So It's a big chunk. Here's our service payroll. So you sit it over here and let that sink in for a minute. So wow, the stack just got a lot smaller just on our service payroll. Next, have somebody else come up. What is this one? Oh, this was occupancy. Things like our rent or our utilities, anything affiliated with our physical space that we work with. Oh, that's a good chunk too, 3 or 4% there. Next, sales and marketing, that's a chunk. In fact, sales and marketing expense, a lot of times I see these way out of whack. These should be in the 8 or 9% range. And I see sales expenses that are sometimes ridiculously high. So have somebody come up and grab this and say, oh, this is sales and marketing expenses. So stick it over here. Oh, the next person comes up. Oh, this is just miscellaneous expense. All the other stuff we spend money on. Look at it over here. And then finally, what are we left with? We're left with profit. So profit's what's left after we pay all this stuff. And oh, by the way, taxes aren't taken out of this yet. So when you really break that down, it's amazing how clear it is to people, how they start to understand it. And again, you don't have to dive into this the first day. If you decide you want to have this conversation with your employees, you can have multiple meetings and take your time. What I did, I liked recording this because when you hire future staff, you can show them this and kind of give them some finance 101 training without having to spend a couple of hours with them one-on-one. So instruct your folks, teach them, and you'll be amazed. Some people, it won't really make a difference, but some people in fact, the majority of your people will really get into this. In fact, I've seen teams where they use this for commissions, they use this for bonus plans. They say, hey, the bigger this stack gets, the more we can do as a company, the more good stuff we can do, the more raises, the more bonuses, the more commissions we can give. So you'll be amazed. I've had people literally come up to me with suggestions on how to reduce our power bill, or how to spend less on toiletries, or spend less on coffee for the coffee machine, because they started to understand how the business worked. They understand how we made money, how we spent money. So if you decide to do this is a good way to do it. Again, I'm not suggesting you do. I'm not suggesting you go out tomorrow and start showing everybody every bit of financial data you've ever had. But if you do, this is one good way. And you can Google open book management and you can look up just as much information as you'd like to see. So hope that helped. If you have any questions, let me know, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.